All right, good morning. It's Monday, so I'm getting ready to do my blog for last week, week 6. Week 6 was a short week for us. We had teachers in service on Thursday and Friday. So I did something a little different with week 6. I always do research projects in my math classrooms. I feel like students need to learn to talk about math, not just be able to work with a variable and some numbers and get an answer, but they need to be able to kind of identify where does it happen in the real world, or just talk about some of their thoughts and some of the things that they're seeing with their language, with English. And so all of my research projects, grammar's never graded, spelling's never graded, but I grade content and I look for original thought. And my students know that right off the bat. I tell them it's not an English classroom, but definitely use the English skills that you have. And so we did our first module on quadratics, and so I did my research project this time on finding parabolas in real life and kind of what some of those models and different things would look like. And so on Monday morning, I got into Brain Honey and I said, okay, I'm gonna set this up in Brain Honey. And so I created one assignment that was worth 75% of the grade, that was 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph was on what is a parabola and how does that connect to a quadratic function. And we went through and did a review Monday morning, just 5 or 10 minutes, talking about quadratics and what it looks like in a table and what it looks like in an equation and what it looks like in a graph, and different things that you're going to see, like maxes and mins and lines of symmetry and just all of these different things. And then the second paragraph was they needed to list 7 different things that they saw as a parabola in real life. And I showed a really short, like 3-minute video that was kind of fun, that gave some examples, and it had a really cool clip in it about the bridge in Seattle, that ended up being blown so hard by wind that it blew apart. So it was like had kind of a 1950s movie feel, and the kids really thought that was interesting, and they watched a bridge actually fall apart that wasn't from a movie, but that was from real life. And we talked a little bit about parabolas and cabling on bridges and things like that. And so the third paragraph was they had to pick one of their 7 situations that they talked about, and in each of those 7 they had to just give a short, kind of quick, this is why I thought it was a parabola, like whether it was its shape, or whether they noticed it was symmetry, or whether they noticed it had a max and min, or whatever it was. And so the third paragraph, they had to pick one of those 7, and they had to write like kind of a detailed description, an analysis about it. And then the other piece, I loaded another assignment in Brain Honey that was a model. They had to sketch a model of the third paragraph. And I learned some definite things along the way. So this week I graded my first test, and I noticed that I need to restructure my test questions a little bit. Some of my matching questions didn't grade point value wise like I was hoping it would, or like I wanted it to. So I went back in and I edited that test so that next year it'll give an appropriate grade, because I noticed this year it ended up kind of being skewed because of the way I had set it up. It was my fault. I just didn't really realize that I had made a mistake until after the fact. So I fixed that so that it's ready to go for next year. And I went through and I ended up having to manually kind of change some grades this time around because I didn't have it fixed for these guys, obviously. And then the other thing I really learned this week was my first couple classes were having a hard time typing that whole essay in one piece. And I thought, it makes more sense to bust those into 3 different paragraphs because the kids can see them. And so for my last class hour, my 6th hour class, before they got into it, I broke those 3 paragraphs into 3 different questions. So instead of having one question with all 3 paragraphs they would type in this big essay, I actually broke the essay down. And that seemed to work way better. We had less technology issues. It was just easier for the kids. They felt like they could kind of check it off. First paragraph done, second paragraph done. I could look at their stuff a little bit easier. So this week I really learned some things about how I'm structuring things in the portal itself, how things are graded compared to how I thought they were graded. It was just me. I just needed to educate myself a little bit more and understand things. By the end of the week, on Wednesday, their research projects were due. Oh my goodness. I had some amazing, I have this one kid do a sketch, and he literally, it was on the trajectory of a bullet, and he is like he drew the entire landscape. He drew the guy with the bullet. He showed the trajectory of the bullet. He sketched out the domain and range. He and wrote in numbers. He talked about, and then he wrote descriptive detail on his sketch about, the parabola's upside down, so it's going to have a negative in front of the x squared. It's going to have a maximum. That maximum is going to be approximately here if I kind of set this up based on my domain and range. I mean, some of the sketches were amazing and fantastic. And all of a sudden, we just took math into the real world. And in the research project, I told them if they identified something that nobody else did as a parabola, they got extra credit. So my kids are like on Google researching like what parabolas are in real life. They are looking at things in the real world. I had one girl come in the next day and she said, "Oh my gosh, Miss C, you're never going to guess and what I saw last night." And I said, "What'd you see?" She said, "I saw a rainbow and I realized it's a parabola." And I was just like, it was awesome moments. And they got to interact totally on the portal. They were so excited because it's electronic, we got to share some things really interesting. I felt like it was exciting. They got to practice their typing skills so much more. Normally, my kids have to handwrite everything. I'm having to send them somewhere else to research when we do research project, because math classrooms, people don't typically expect those kind of things. It's just something I really like to do. And now that I have the devices, they're researching in my classroom. They're practicing all of their electronic technology skills with typing and formatting. Gave me a great opportunity to talk about, we don't use the letter U, we use YOU. We don't use the texting shortcuts because they're so used to when they're typing using those shortcuts. And I just it gave me a great platform and opportunity to talk about those things to encourage English pieces. So I thought it was awesome. I thought it was crazy successful. As far as my lunch study hall that I've been running, it's still a challenge in some areas, but I want to talk about one specific student. I haven't asked if I can say his name yet, so I will just refer to him as Joe. And Joe is one of my students who had a rough start to the year. He is very social, and I don't think he really thought it was going to really happen. And so I have put Joe in study hall, and he had an F, a very low F, when I put him in study hall a couple weeks ago for lunch study hall. And he's one of those kids that I'm always having, come on, you can do. He's like, but Miss C, it's just whatever. But he stayed on it, and he keeps being consistent, and he keeps coming every day. He's come. And, we have the joking back and forth, and he's like, but I don't want to. I'm like, well, that doesn't matter. Let's get it done. And I just want to tell you that because of what Brain Honey's done, and because of lunch study hall, this is so, it almost gets emotional for me, I'll be honest. But I had a kid who is he's not done well in math in the past. He gets behind and then feels like he can't ever get caught up. He's come into lunch study hall, and he went from a low F, 36%, to, as of Wednesday, I got to sign him out of lunch study hall with a 92.4% in my class. And you want to know one of the big reasons I got to do that is because I got to spend all of my time in lunch study hall helping him and not grading his papers. The computer graded it for me. I always have a couple questions in there that I grade, so I jump in and I graded maybe 5 out of 200 questions he did that he was missing in all these different assignments. And I looked at a few other things, and I was able to spend all of this one-on-one time with this student. And now, oh my gosh, he was beaming on Wednesday. I wish I could have videoed him for you. He's like, I have an A? I have an A in math? And I said, yeah. I said, you see what happens when you get everything turned in? I said, you have an A. Even after your test, you have an A. Everything in. You have an A. And he was ecstatic. And I was so excited. You have those kids all the time. You're like, man, if they would just turn their work in. Or if they would just. And Brain Honey lets me spend my time on my kid. And not as much time on all the administrative to-do list stuff. That is the most powerful tool for me. I'm so excited. He's not the only one. He's the biggest change I've seen, but I've got lots of kids that have gone from C's to A's, just with a little bit of effort. And they're kids. I had a kid come in the other day who just said, Miss C, I'm always a D and F student in math. And he said, this new way we're doing math, he's like, I have an A. I have an A in math, and I get it, and I'm excited. and he's coming in and showing me stuff. He's actually not even in my class. He's in our other math class, and he's just, Miss C, I want to show you this. So awesome. Look what I figured out. So I'm excited, and I'm learning so many new things just about how to make this tool work better for me and better for my kids. Just kind of a last little tidbit before I get off the video right here. One of my charging carts is together and got everything in it. This week I'll hopefully kind of give you guys a little bit of a tour of those. I'm hoping they're going to work great this next week. I have to be out a couple days this week, so I'm going to try some video training with my kids, and we're going to see how that goes. So again, trying lots of new stuff, always trying new stuff. But week 6 was a huge success, and a lot of great things happened. Even though it was a short week, I came out of it just going, this is such an amazing tool, and I'm never going back. I'm never going back to the way I used to teach. So I hope you guys are gleaning things from this, and I can't wait to tell you about week 7 because it's going to be interesting. We're doing all kinds of new different things. So I will see you next week.